Before we begin, subscribe for more chilling stories and tell me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Miles had abandoned the cacophonous sprawl of Atlanta's Midtown, where honking horns fuse with barroom brawls and the Chattahoochee's murmur drowned under urban roar, leaving scars of shift work burnout etched deep. He craved respite in the oak-draped suburbs of Roswell, Georgia, an enclave of ranchers and split levels cradled by the winding Crabapple Creek, where fireflies pulsed like errant stars in summer gloam. The bungalow he leased perched on Willow Bend Drive, a low-slung affair in dove-gray stucco with a pecan grove sentinel in the rear, its perimeter girded by a weathered cedar stockade that creaked in the breeze. Adjoining across the divide loomed a modular ranch with fresh vinyl siding and a privacy lattice of latticework, the sort of tract where mailboxes bore monikers in scripted brass and sprinklers whispered hymns to emerald swards. The landlord, a portly fellow named Harlan with a drawl like molasses over gravel, forked the keys with a wink. "Prime quiet," he drawled. "Folks mind their margins here." Miles envisioned Dusks nursing IPAs on the patio, blueprints unrolling under his drafting lamp for architectural bids that promised solvency, insulated from the ER's fluorescent glare and the phantom screams of patients he'd failed to anchor. He unloaded under a harvest moon's amber wash, pickup rumbling to curb, the rear slider yielding to a puff of musty air laced with linseed oil. The lease stipulated soundness, reinforced slab against clay shift, Peck's arteries pulsing through joists like hidden sinews, no radon seeping from the subsoil. Crepuscule spilled russet through Venetian blinds as he arrayed his kit, a T-square on the drafting bureau, a brewer gurgling on the counter, and sank into the low-slung sectional, the creak's distant babble and nocturne threading the lattice. Rhythms knit in subdued measure. A row jogs along mulch trails where dew clung to live oak bark, and zeniths bent over elevations, lines precise as incisions in the den's slanted ray. It stirred him the fifth vigil, as autumn's brass nipped the ether. A silhouette materializing by the stockade's nadir in the sable hour past 2. Immobile, it loomed facing his domain. No ember glow of vice or flicker of device, merely a form etched against the gloaming, steadfast as a monolith. Miles chalked it to reverie under constellations or vigil for errant kin, yet Recurrent's nightly etched unease, the shade rooted in the selfsame locus, unswerving in its orientation. On the octave eve, as he ferried bins to the curb under gibbous pallor, the contour reemerged, precipitating that glacial trickle down his spine, the intuition of scrutiny unblinking. He ventured a salute, palm arcing tentative. The shade stirred not, a void in the velvet. He hastened inward, bolt snicking with undue fervor. Meridian unveiled the neighbor in diurnal light at the communal postbox cluster, unremarkable. 40s, nondescript in chinos and polo, grin bisecting features sans ocular warmth. "Howdy," he intoned. "Howdy," Miles echoed. "Adjustin' well?" "Fair enough," Miles parried, mendacity smooth. "Splendid," the man replied, pivoting to his path. That dusk, ere repose, Miles scanned from the galley casement, the shade held court anew by the pale confronting his facade. He elected disregard, weirdos abounded, solipsism a snare. Duo eaves hence, a velvet rasp assailed the stockade circa 2, akin to tines grazing grain in languid cadence. Miles roused, parting the slider a chink, night inhaling loamy petrichor and moan verdure. "Anybody?" he queried. The abrasion halted. He tarried. A sibilance wafted over the pale, disyllabic, perchance his patronymic, perchance Zephyr's jest. He secured the breach. Prime disclosed striations afresh on his flank of the barrier, elongate and uniform at ocular plane, as if talents had trawled in tandem. He imputed juvenile mischief. That crepuscule ablutions at the basin, he glimpsed outward. The shade persisted. He quelled the flow, transfixed in mutual regard across verdure and paling and dying light, 60 paces of limbo. After a span, the shade elevated a limb in ponderous arc, undulating infinitesimal. Urge surged to reciprocate, Miles hoisted midway. The shade desisted, limb plummeting, contour willing to obscurity behind carport gloom. Absence bred jitter, the interregnum atop bowstring. The inaugural tempest menaced on Sabbath, zephyrs flogging the slats. At 1:30 ante-meridian, luminance quenched, domicile contracting in the hush. Then resonant as knuckle on pane, triune thumps assailed the pale, thud, thud, thud. Miles bolted erect. Thud, 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 till echo alone lingered in the plenum. He descended, unlatching the slider, torch lancing the sword. Droplets coruscated like interference. The slats endured sentinel. Exhalation plumed in the crisp. Anybody? He invoked, timbre attenuated. Flux behind the barrier. An umbra, a perturbation. Then a murmur proximal as if confederate at his scapula within the galley, sans the pale's intercession. He dwells no more therein. Miles gyrated. Vacancy embraced him. The stoop's beacon kindled autonomous, enduring as an orb unblinking. Deluge waned pre-aurora. Current resuming at sixth. Miles circuited the pale with Joe and fist. His aspect unscathed. Through a fistular knot, his vista beheld sable-smeared chestward on the planks, perhaps Meyer, perhaps Icker. That crepuscular motility in the adjacent precinct drew his veil. A divergent form held the pale, elongated, scapulae awry, poised as if articulated by filaments askew. He observed quinquenio, the eidolon unyielding an iota. He retired with portal barricaded, chiffonier atort jam like frail bulwark. Subsequent quinzanes trifles absconded from his domain, a stylus, a gauntlet, a bevel. Ephemera dismissible until schema emerged. He emplaced an ocular in the galley, lens on the slider. Footage chronicled solitary transits, ingress nil, perambulation void. Nevertheless, larcenies persisted. Sundry repatriated anomalously, a slate hose furled in the icebox, the bevel erect in a succulent. Repose fragmented, Miles devolved to the vigilant, scrutinizing wardrobes duple, torches ubiquitous in chambers. Spans contracted into strong vigilance, Miles shunning the galley's prospect, sustenance bolted in the alcove beneath the chronometer's inexorable tick that colluded with the pale's spectral vigil. He texted sibling Nora in Savannah, inflection sheathed in fables of splintered sills and eremites gnaw, his levity splintering like whore. Nora intuited the schisms, proffering ingress, but Miles reposted with meteorology missives and blueprint scans dispatched in precipitous salvos. The slats bore engravings by coxcomb, lithe as graver's quill, coiling into arabesques that scripted watcher and vacillant hand. He abraded them one leaden meridian, file leavings spiraling like queries, but Vesper unveiled refreshed engravings, augurer lettering dwells. Cynicism separated, psyche dredging abyssal rebukes, the tenures toll in his lapsed vigilance, patience rattles unstaunched by his hand, siblings rift sans bridge, his isolation a brand self-forged. The bungalow amplified these resonances, rafters intoning impeachments in the zephyr's lisp. He trekked to Roswell's registry, a stucco vestige exhaling arid scroll and wraith-like stillness, sifting folios beneath the keeper's veiled vigil. The ranch's analog surfaced in ambrotype. Harlan Voss, surveyor of ill repute, sequestered post his client's tumble from the scaffold, his vigil fabled to ensorcel pales, replaying scrutinies to lucidity unraveled. Miles's stylus hovered, the folio's timestamp syncing with his tenure's nadir. 1:30, the Sabbath of the unheeded code that ossified his exile. Fortuity, he demurred, yet reversion devolved through take veils, wiper blades slashing futile, the dashpane misting with exhalation that etched watcher and dust calligraphy. Night enwrapped Willow Bend in jet, a Haboo thundering from the Piedmont, scrub lashing casement like punitive lashes. Miles buttressed a slider with dowel braces, mallet thumps lost in the simoom's howl, threads straining against the inexorable. Denward, he ransacked a cedar locker of his lineage, billets from the siblings sepia-toned like welts. You guarded blueprints, blind to the fractures we bore. He incinerated them in the grate, conflagration voracious on vellum into caustic vortex that reefed like talons, yet embers gyred aloft, reconstituting in the updraft as Harlan's murmur, "Neighbor, the pale perceives." Mania crested, miles beset the stockade's breach, slats lacerating anew in feral torque, confronting the locust where planks yawed like treacherous planks. The form loomed, smear effulgent in lunar seep, a gaze inverted. He assailed the pale, palm bruising on unyielding grain, when a rasp percolated, tines methodical on joists, proximate as marrow. He recoiled, lattice ensnaring in retreat, and dashed bungalowward, barricading in the den amid crates of fusty drafts reeking of graphite and desolation. The Haboo peaked at Compline, Vigus intoning requiem, and at 1:30 the thud burgeoned from the divide, Harlan's susurrus ballooning to keening that quaked the pilings. Neighbor, behold us. The shade absolves not. Miles plummeted to the boundary in the anti-meridian lull, pry bar quivering in clasp, and rent the slats asunder, bindings fracturing like brittle oats. The recess gate, cedar rent, a brass astrolabe throned on plinth of charred ledger, arm oscillating hypnotic, its stratified scrutinies, Harlan's vigils interwoven with his own, the siblings' recrimination veining through like argent filament. He pulverized it forthwith, bar descending in manic parabolas, brass crumpling to chaff, arm unraveling into ebony threads that skittered like absconding spirits. The Haboob fractured with the ultimate strike, hush inundating like ebbing surge, bequeathing solely the creek's stoic gurgle. Soul sundered prismatic, orb shivered on swell brows, jays darting in sardonic liberty. Miles tendered the least blind, crating T-Square and Brewer into the pickup. Willow Bend receding in the mirror like slowed integument. Yet as he breasted the rise to lowlands, a rasp stirred in the console, astray dividers, its point orifice exhaling Harlan's lilt. Neighbor, the line beholds likewise. Quarters hence, in a clamorous savannah loft, thrumming from avenues growl and bureau babble, Miles roused at 1:30 nightly, the thud a throb in his vault, scrutiny's threading conduits in flues. He forswore perimeters, but every blueprint's margin birthed resonances, Harlan's plea entwining with the siblings' faint summons, luring him to viaducts spanning torrent valves where the current crooned of remission. Nora alighted, unearthed him limning boundary shades and inkblots, an important counsel's clinical gleam, but Miles rebuffed with the rictus rind at margins. He disseminated the divider's detritus in the Ojichi, one talc-shrouded crepuscle, shards plummeting like plumbed professions, yet Eddie's huge sigils on the meniscus, behold. The scrutiny subsisted, not in brass or arm, but intercalated in the zephyr's exhalation, the dust drum, summoning him to the lemon where purgation floundered in the crevice. In serene vigils, delineating fissures in the plaster like arteries, he divined the suction, unyielding as current, Harlan's form perforating the call, his own reproaches floatant like jetsam. The code he couldn't decrypt, the sibling he couldn't mend, the patience he couldn't preserve. The shade invoked unceasingly, a litany of the overlooked, lingering for his gaze to fuse the gulf. One meridian subsequent, novices claimed the ranch, a duo with issue in a cur that bayed at voids in the sward, each sexed at 2 and 12. The rear precinct burgeoned playden, drapes azure as cerulean. Nocturnally, sporadically, the fold stirred sans proximity. 3 vigils antecedent at 1:30, a subdued form kindled for one respiration air quiescence. Elias had honed his craft as a portraitist for nigh on 12 years, capturing the poised facades of debutantes and dowagers in Charleston's antebellum parlors, where magnolias perfumed the air and live oaks draped in resurrection fern whispered of bygone splendor. He knew one truth above all: canvases forgave, but reflections did not. Brushwork that softened jowls or amplify gazes, yet a mirror laid bare the soul's subtle fractures, the twitch of a lip betraying unspoken regrets, the hollow in eyes that no powder could fell. That's why some sitters shunned them during sessions. Pretense crumbled under unyielding glass. Elias always incorporated a reflective element, though, for it lent depth, layering sitter upon shadow in a tapestry akin to fractured reminiscence. The commission that upended his certainties unfolded in the Hawthorne Manor, a restored Federalist gem on the Battery in Charleston, South Carolina, its verandas overlooking the harbor where palmetto swayed like silent mourners. Every chamber brimmed with mirrors. The grand foyer boasted a pier glass that multiplied staircases into vertiginous infinities. The drawing room a beveled triptych that ensnared light in prismatic deceit. Even the powder room's vanity a seamless pane that plunged one into abyssal self-confrontation. The patroness, a luminous widow named Lydia with tresses like polished mahogany, exuded serenity, her betrothed a silver-haired antiquarian whose voice quavered with emotion at the unveiling. The afternoon unfolded in golden haze, the kind artists invoke in silent pleas, diffusing through fanlights to gild the oaken wainscot. Elias commenced with preparatory sketches amid the attendants in silk shawls, charcoal tracing the curve of cameos and the glint of heirloom curls on velvet. He rendered vignettes of the betrothal band and the vellum invitations strewn on damask, pigments pooling like spilled secrets. Then he positioned Lydia before the drawing room's triptych, entreating a measured inhalation and a candid regard. She complied, lashes fluttering like moth wings. He daubed 3 studies. In the final, her echo in the glass curved its lips a shade broader than her own composure. The divergence was infinitesimal. A hasty viewer might dismiss it as trompe-l'oeil, yet Elias discerned it forthwith on his easel, the reflected mouth parting fractionally more, the orbs agleam with undue vivacity. It evoked a divergent instant, as if the glass harbored an alternate yielding. He ascribed it to refractive quirk, the bevel's warp near the frame's verge, perhaps. He relocated her to the casement for chiaroscuro contrasts, sea breeze stirring the lace. They revisited the triptych for the mantilla's affixation later. He layered 5 impressions as the matron of honor pinned the lace. In the terminal, the echo's crown inclined a trifle askew from Lydia's poise, subtle once more. He chided his zeal for flawlessness, the manor's antiquity seeding oesions in the mind's fertile loam. The rite ensued in the conservatory, a verdant nave with a mirrored alcove at its nave, framing the chancel in recursive vistas that elongated the nave into eternity. Elias stationed athwart the foremost pews, averting his profile from the glass to evade self-intrusion in compositions. The pledges resonated poetic, tissues dabbing at brims. As they sealed with a kiss, Elias wheeled to ensnare the jubilant throng and the clinch from oblique vantage, the alcove's gleam in periphery. Within the recursion, amid the assemblage, loomed a figure in gown of nacreous ivory, beaming and applauding with a posy clutched in pallid knuckles. She accented the chamber. Elias tallied the pews, 80 souls, capacity brimmed. He verified visages in subsequent edits. No correspondent emerged. Post-right, he glanced rearward. The alcove stood barren. His brush trembled faintly, strokes veering awry on a few panels. The steward inquired of hydration. He demurred, composure a veneer. At the revelry in the orangery, mirrors paneled the walls, refracting chandeliers into stellar coronas. Revelers whirled. The quartet rendered the duo's refrain. In a rendition of the paternal waltz, the far triptych betrayed supplemental digits clasping the posy with Lydia, but her grasp lay vacant upon inspection. He withheld utterance, one disrupts not nuptials for vitreous caprice. He tendered the portfolio punctual, anomalies unremarked. Quarters hence, another mandate summoned him to Hawthorne. He vowed circumvention of the drawing room's triptych, favoring casement luminance, minimizing rebounds. Yet the patroness craved the archetypal echo study. Demurral ill befits the artisan. He arrayed her. He superimposed 3 layers. And the tertiary, the echo fixed upon him beaming though Lydia regarded her attendant. He lowered palate. The patroness queried equanimity. He affirmed. He prosecuted the remainder with buoyant inflection and visceral constriction. That glooming, post-departure, as stewards whisked confetti from tesserae, Elias re-entered the drawing room solitary. He confronted the triptych, essaying smiles, scowls, lateral tilts. His echo synchronized impeccably. He chortled, absurdity cresting. He elevated sketchpad, rendering a self-portrait. In the rendering, his echo-poised limbs lax, regarding him with mien of commiseration. Then it beamed. He effaced the sheet unregarded. He collated impedimenta and decamped. He excised reflections from his itineraries henceforth, save client fiat. He feigns ingenuity elsewhere. The manor persists in engagements. He traverses the drawing room's triptych sightless, though recompense might compel scrutiny. Latterly, Tabitha veiled it, rustling in drafts like murmured vows. In the powder room, he laved digits, gaze earthward from the seamless expanse. Departing, he ensnared his echo inadvertent in a gloomy transom. He appeared wearied. His echo, jubilant. He has shrouded his domicile's glasses in muslin, and deems he shan't unveil. For yesternight, traversing the corridor, he glimpsed his form in the sable pane. Solely his echo stirred, beaming.
Seasons telescoped into harried century, Elias skirting the atelier's prospect, commissions gulped in the alcove under the pendulum's inexorable tick that conspired with the manor's spectral vigils. He confided in compatriot Theo and Savannah, timber-armored and yarns of warped canvases and solitarial drift, his mirth fracturing like thin ice. Theo divined the undercurrents, urging ingress, but Elias parried with climbed dispatches and pigment proofs, forwarded in scrawled missives. The triptych bore incisions by cockcrow, slender as Buren's edge, arcing into flourishes that scripted beholder and faltering flourish. He burnished them one gray noon, rasp filings spiraling like interrogatives, but twilight revealed fresh traceries, deeper, inscribing echo. Doubt festered, his mind dredging submerged shames, the betrothal heat sabotaged in youthful spite, the patroness's pleas muted by ambition's haze, the kin's silhouette fleeing without valediction, his solitude a brand seared eternal. The manor amplified these reverberations, cornices murmuring arraignments in the draft sigh. He ventured to Charleston's Historical Society, a stuccoed archive exhaling vellum must and phantasmal hush, poring over folios beneath the archivist's hooded gaze. The manor's ledger surfaced. Isolde Wren, consort to the merchant, sequestered post her siblings plunged from the veranda, her echoes reputed to ensorcel glasses, replaying scrutinies till sanity frayed. Elias's quill hovered, the chronicle's timestamp aligning with his sabotage's nadir, too sharp, the hour of the unanswered billet that ossified his isolation. Coincidence, he averred, yet the drive home blurred through palmetto veils, defroster wheezing futile, the rear view fogging with breath that etched beholder in vaporous script. Nightfall cloaked the battery in obsidian, a norther keening from the low country, fronds lashing fan lights like vengeful lashes. Elias fortified the studio door with crossbars, torque wrench bites echoing the tempest's wail, sinews straining against the implacable. Attic-ward, he unearthed a mahogany trunk of his provenance, missives from the kin yellowing like bruises. You painted facades, blind to the ruins beneath. He consigned them to the pyre. Inferno voracious on parchment into acrid smoke that coiled like specters, yet ashes swirled upward, reconstituting in the flue as Isolde's timber, the loved, the glass beholds. Delirium crested, Elias assailed the triptych's facade, palette knife wedging bevel with desperate pry, shards drawing blood that wept like indictments. Beneath lurked not frame, but a niche resounding the echo, faint and manifold. Share your gaze, the reflection hungers. He staggered, glass cascading like brittle resolve, and fled to the harbor's edge, gale whipped quay treacherous underfoot, beacon fracturing the squall to unveil phantasms in the spindrift. Isolde's contour, arm extended, yoked with his kin's translucent shade, eyes hollow with unspoken blame. Elias teetered on the bulkhead's brink, abyss churning ink below, the nor'wester's adjuration fraternal in its fury, but a rogue gust hurled him inward, bruising flank on capstan. Soaked and gasping, he lurched manorward, barricading in the studio amid crates of mildewed studies reeking of turpentine and remorse. The norther crested at midnight, rafters chanting dirge, and at 2 the gleam burgeoned from the pier glass, Isolde's susurrus swelling to extrication that shivered the joists. Beloved, unmask, the echoes absolve nothing. Elias descended in the pre-dawn interlude, adze quivering in grasp, and sundered the niche, bevels rupturing like frail covenants. The recessed gate, taffeta rent, a silver handglass enthroned on trestle of warped ledger, facets whirring frenzied, its layered luminosities, Isolde scrutinizes entwined with his own, the kin's recrimination veining through like silver thread. He demolished it then, adze arcing in frenzied sweeps, silver buckling like foil, facets fracturing into obsidian pearls that scattered like fleeing souls. The norther shattered with the final impact, quiescence flooding like receding tide, leaving only the harbor's indifferent lap. Dawn fractured opalescent, orbs splintered on wave crests, gulls wheeling in sardonic freedom. Elias tendered commission selectively, packing easel and brewer into the sedan, the battery dwindling in the glass like discarded husk. But as he crested the Ashley River Bridge to the mainland, a gleam stirred in the glove box, a straight compact, its lens mouth exhaling Isolde's lilt. Beloved, the path attends too. Months later, in a bustling Savannah flat alive with thoroughfare rumble and atelier murmur, Elias roused at 2 nightly, the gleam a cadence in his veins, echoes murmuring through walls and vents. He shunned glass, but every varnish's sheen birthed resonances, Isolde's query layering with his kin's faint summons, drawing him to the levees, spanning rushing estuaries where the current crooned of release. Theo visited, found him etching spectral countenances in margin sketches, and pressed therapy's measured light, but Elias waved it off with a smile frayed at edges. He pulverized the compact in the Savannah River, one fog-veiled dusk, shards sinking like weighted truths, yet ripples etched sigils on the surface. Unmask. The echoes endured, not in silver or facet, but woven into the gale's breath, the rain's patter beckoning him to the verge where confession drowned in the deep. In hushed vigils, tracing cracks in the ceiling like veins, he felt the draw, inexorable as tide, Isolde's arm extended through the veil, his own guilt surfacing like buoys. The billet he couldn't answer, the kin he couldn't reclaim, the patroness he couldn't preserve. The reflection summoned eternal, a chorus of the unseen, waiting for his gaze to join the gleam. The manor persists in summons. He traverses the drawing room's triptych veiled, though taffeta rustle unbidden. Latterly chiffon shrouded it, sighing in drafts like fractured vows. In the powder room he laves digits earthward from the seamless expanse. Departing, he ensnares his echo inadvertent in a gloaming transom. He appears wearied, his echo jubilant. Elias has shrouded his domicile's glasses in muslin, and deems he shan't unveil, for yesternight traversing the corridor, he glimpsed his form in the sable pane. Solely his echo stirred, beaming.
Nathan had walled himself into the muted hush of evergreen Washington after the clamor of Seattle's Capitol Hill chewed through his marriage and spat out the remnants, leaving him with a divorce decree and echoes of slammed doors that rattled in his ribs like loose change. He chose the split level on Alderwood Lane for its isolation, a modest frame house with saltbox roof and a backyard sloping to a chain-link divide, where Douglas firs clawed at perpetual drizzle skies and the Snohomish River murmured indictments through the underbrush. The adjacent plot had lain fallow for half a decade, its rancher sagging under ivy choke, windows blind with grime, the outbuilding a lean-to of warped plywood that sagged like a guilty secret. Neighbors nodded from afar in this tract of tidy lawns and recycling bins, But Nathan kept to his porch rituals: black coffee in a chipped mug, the Gazette folded unread, gaze fixed on the tree line to evade the void within. The landlord, a wiry veteran named Gus with a voice like grinding gears, had assured vacancy. "That side's been quiet since the last folks cleared out abrupt. Suits a man wanting space." Nathan pictured Eves, lost in case files for his remote paralegal gigs, insulated from the courtroom's venom and the ghost of his wife's final glare, accusing him of absences that carved their bond hollow. He settled amid November's slate pall, truck idling on the oil-stained drive, the rear hatch yielding crates of law tomes and a lone fern that wilted en route. The lease affirmed integrity, bolted foundation against seismic whim, copper conduits webbed unseen like neural scars, no mold metastasizing in the crawl. Dusk bled pewter through fogged sliders as he arrayed his sparse gamin, a laptop on the scarred Crescenza, a percolator hissing on the range, and surrendered to the recliner's maw. The river's low growl a dirge sifting the pail. Patterns wove in austere cadence, pre-dawn rambles along fern-choked paths where mist clung to Salah like veils, and forenoons submerged in precedence, clauses uncoiling like vines in the study's slant beam. It fractured on the eve of the equinox, as chills seeped through weather stripping, a lorry reversing into the follow drive, progeny tumbling forth there the rumble ceased, a collie bounding the sward in exuberant arcs. Nathan glanced upward from his stoop, the intrusion a fissure in his carapace, stirring silted yearnings for the life he'd interred. The arrivals, the Harrisons, a quartet unremarkable in their domestic tableau, the patriarch hoisting crates with barked jests, the matriarch juggling a fringed fixture atop her crown to elicit giggles, the duo of offspring orbiting like satellites. Normalcy dizzied him, a vertigo of what-ifs unbidden. He vowed detachment, shutters drawn on the fray. Their sophomoric vigil, circa 2 antemeridium, wrenched him erect as his hound, the grizzled lab who slumbered me tempests, keened at the posterior portal. Nathan unlatched, chill nipping bare soles on dew-slick planks, the ether redolent of sodden loam and pine resin. Or the pale emanated a cadenced rasp, drag, halt, akin to mass-hauled ore aggregate in syncopated respiration. Then a murmur, juvenile timbre. "Papa?" He ossified, the rasp suspended. The murmur neared the lattice. "Papa, may we re-enter?" Aridity seized his gorge. The rancher loomed lightless, drapes inert as shrouds. He ventured, "Aid required?" The rasp accelerated, erratic as diminutive palms straining excess, culminating in a portal's resonant clap from within, then hush profound. Nathan lingered, palms a chain link, till the lab nudged insistent. Prime dismissed it as somnolent delusion, reveries amplifying an abrupt rouse. Septet suns hence, he spied the patriarch at the outbuilding, mallet securing a fresh hasp, saluting cursorily. Nathan reciprocated involuntary, retreating to the galley where he splayed digits flat upon formica, verifying steadiness. Moro, the matriarch rapped with abundant. Neighborly overture, she beamed, orb shadowed by novitiate's toll. Discourse meandered to refused rhythms and the alders spring catkins like festive detritus. The progeny cavorted his precinct, the lab submitting to caresses. That eve, repose claimed him unfractured. Dual vigils posterior, the rasp resurfaced, trailed by a bass traction along his pale's verso, as if a elongate burden trawled the slats. Nathan ignited the stoop's lumen. Filament burst to void. He inhaled, torch quivering in clasp, venturing outward. Ray lanced barren sward. Retreating, it revealed diminutive damp imprints from pale to threshold. Unshod, juvenile span. He bolted ingress, subsiding floorward athwart the jam, till Aurora's reluctant seep. Vigil ensuing, circa 3, a delicate percussion assailed his boudoir transom, then a susurrus. He's returned, it breathed, to the outbuilding anew. Nathan approached the pane, confronting sable interstice betwixt abodes. Urge warred to impute hallucination, yet wakefulness ached visceral. Identity? He queried the void. Who's in the outbuilding? Quiescence. He forewent slumber. Prime, he essayed confections, digits steadied in the oven's warmth, ferrying the tray adjacent. The matriarch unveiled pallid, patriarch glooming. Stern. He probed. All well? She faltered. He interjected flift. Prime, obliged. The last peak maternal flank murmuring. He communes through the partition. Patriarch guttered. Matriarch appended. Acclamations clamor. Nathan inclined, depositing the vessel porchward.
That eve, the outbuilding's hinge wailed circa 2:30, a protracted moan trailed by latches snap. A baritone susurration convened, then juvenile rejoinder from anomalous vector, as if from subsoil. Nathan vigiled at the transom, umbras fluxing posterior the pale. The lab quivered flankward. He summoned not constables, versed in summons Baron Sans Corpus. Moro, the patriarch, alighted, haggard as unrested, soliciting surplus paling sinew for the outbuilding's gale wobble. Nathan proffered lag bolts and Hosser erst trashward. Patriarch tendered thanks sightless. That vigil, deluge pattered. Circa 3, or the sibilance on verdure, Nathan discerned Hosser's serpentine or cacondrous thump, thud, thud, contra the outbuilding's interior. The juvenile's chamber lumen kindled, quenched duple. Prime, Hosserlax and Mater, outbuilding portal askew. On Sabbath, Nathan accosted the matriarch amid frontal tilled bed, querying verity. She regarded with mien a foundational shift, the gaze of plummeting strata. I discern his discourse to her, she confided Soto. Yet she avers it's not paternal. Nathan faltered utterance. He proffered succor, domicile proximate. That eve he vigiled in the galley, lumens Elias. At 2, triune raps at posterior ingress. Nathan arose, 2 paces shy. Occupant, a juvenile timber traversed the grain. Might you bid him cease? Palm to jam, he sensed chill locus, as if miniature counterpart oppressed verso. Whom? The one who terms me darling yet unblinks. He gulped. Re-enter, he counseled. Secure your portal. Quiescence. Then patter of miniature treads over sodden sward. He invoked watchmen. They perambulated cordial, practiced in surfeit. They circumvented Finks torch led. They rapped adjacent. Patriarch affirmed equanimity. Bailiff enjoined reoccurrence. Duo sons posterior, a placard manifested in the Harrison sward. Realtor ferried prospects unsaluted. Removal day progeny perambulated vehicular, digits interlaced. Patriarch bore nothing from outbuilding. That vigil, circa 2:30, hinge wailed, baritone intoning, darling. From subsoil proximal pale, an alien juvenile timber riposted. She decamped. Baritone exhaled. Sufficient, he soothed. We adapt.
Epochs compacted into beleaguered watch, Nathan evading the galley's vista, Vian scarfed in the vestibule beneath the chronometer's inexorable tick that whined in league with the pale's latent rasp. He phoned Ken Riley in Spokane, tone sheathed in fictions of leaky gutters and anchorite's bite, his jollity splintered like parched clay. Riley probed with fraternal acuity, scenting rifts, but Nathan counted with meteorological missives and case clippings forwarded in hasty packets. The slats bore excoriations by Don's fringe, live as cat's claw, spiraling into arabesques that inscribed "Darling" in tremulous flourish. He scoured them one ochre midday, rasp tailings coiling like riddles, but twilight unveiled renewed incisions, profounder, lettering, adapt. Dubiety festered, psyche dreading Stygian censures, the union's demise in his vocational thrall, wife's entreaties muted by docket deluge, kin's estrangement sans requiem, his seclusion a scar, cauterized perdurable. The split level magnified these undulations, Joyce's murmuring impeachments in the rivulet's lisp. He forayed to Evergreen's annals, a clapboard remnant exhaling musty codex, an idolic quiescence, calming ledgers beneath the custodian's shrouded heed. The ranch's codicil emerged in tintype, Beatrice Quill, relict of the logger, immured post her progeny's tumble into the Snohomish's maw, her murmurs fabled to ensorcell pales, replaying convocations till reason unraveled. Nathan's stylus lingered, the ledger's dateline syncing with his union's terminal facture. 2:30, the self-same Sabbath of the unheeded summons that ossified his exile. Happenstance, he protested, yet repatriation devolved through spindrift shrouds, defogger laboring vain, the console mirror beating with respiration that scripted "darling" in rhyme script. Nightfall enwrapped alderwood and jet, a southeaster bellowing from the Olympics, bow scourging pain like retributive thongs. Nathan girded the posterior with hosser stays, mallet thumps drowned in the maelstrom's bay, thews straining versus the ineluctable. Studyward he forged a pine coffer of his lineage, billets from the wife sepia-hued like stigmata. You chained to briefs, blind to the voids we spanned.
He emulated them in the grate, Holocaust ravenous on vellum into an acrid nebula that spiraled like claws, yet residua gyred skyward, reconstituting in the updraft as Beatrice's Caceres. Neighbor, the pale perceives. Hysteria peaked. Nathan beset the pale's breach, links lacerating anew in savage purchase, confronting the locust where slats yawed like treacherous planks. The rasp emanated, juvenile timber proximal as morrow. He recoiled, chain ensnaring in retreat, and dashed split-levelward, entrenching in the study amid hampers of fusty briefs reeking of ink and desolation. The southeaster culminated at Compline, rafters intoning coronach, and at 2:30, the rasp burgeoned from the divide, Beatrice's Caceres inflating to ululation that convulsed the footings. Neighbor, convene us, the threshold absolves nil. Nathan plummeted to the boundary in the preprandial interregnum, prybar shivering in vice, and sundered the links asunder, bindings rupturing like frangible packs. The chasmal gaped, chain rent, a iron hasp throned on dais of mildewed ledger, teeth gnashing mesmeric, its stratified convocations, Beatrice's murmurs interwoven with his own, the wife's stricture veining through like aureate filament. He atomized it anon, bar plummeting in delirious ellipses, iron warping to chaff, teeth unraveling into ebony shards that cavorted like fugitive essences. The southeaster sundered with the paramount stroke, quiescence deluging like reflux surge, endowing solely the river's stoic suspiration. They start sundered iridescent, spheres shivered on swell brows, warblers darting in ironic emancipation. Nathan proffered the lease unviewed, boxing laptop and percolator into the truck, alderwood receding in the reflector like molted dermis. Yet as he surmounted the rise to veils, a rasp stirred in the dash, a stray padlock, its shackle orifice exhaling Beatrice's lilt. Neighbor, the chain beholds likewise. Semester's hints, in a boisterous Phocane airy resounding with boulevard's snarl and bureau prattle, Nathan roused at 2:30 nightly, the rasp a pulsation in his vault, convocations lacing ducts and vents. He forswore thresholds, but every clause's margin birthed resonances, Beatrice's plea entwining with his wife's tenuous summons, alluring him to cataracts spanning torrent gulfs where the cascade caroled of remission. Riley alighted, unearthed him limbing threshold shades and graphite smudges, and exhorted psychotherapy's aseptic radiance, but Nathan rebuffed with a grimace glazed at brinks. He disseminated the padlock's residuum in the Spokane one nebula-shrouded crepuscle, fragments plunging like plumbed professions, yet billows-hued sigils on the lamina. Convene. The convocation subsisted, not in iron or shackle, but intercalated in the zephyr's exhalation, the drizzle's drum, summoning him to the limen where purgation foundered in the crevasse. In serene vigils, limbing crevices in the lath like sinews, he divined the suction, unyielding as cascade, Beatrice's murmur perforating the call, his own reproaches flotant like jetsam, the summons he couldn't heed, the wife he couldn't reclaim, the kin he couldn't redeem. The threshold invoked unceasingly, a litany of the interred, lingering for his voice to fuse the gulf. The ranch persists vacant, the outbuilding's portal nailed, quartet lustrous brads, the brads crooked, the hosser vanished, the lab shuns the sward unescorted. Sporadically, tardive, he discerns minute treads on posterior steps and a Caceres at ingress. Might you bid him cease? Nathan responds not. He unlatches not. He slumbers not. He sustains lumens. And never, ever regards the pale post-midnight.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more terrifying stories.